Good afternoon. It is 2 o'clock on Tuesday, May the 20th, and we are in weather impact alert mode, tracking thunderstorms moving into North Georgia later on this evening and overnight, and some of those could be strong or severe. So we've issued this weather impact alert because we do believe the risk of stronger storms will be more widespread than some of our other most recent episodes the last couple of days, and also a little bit more intense. So strong storms, that main window of concern between 9 p.m. this evening and 5 a.m. first thing tomorrow morning. However, we could see storms a little before that range starts up in the northwestern corner of the state. I just don't think it is as widespread as what I expect after 9 p.m. What are we talking about with severe threats? Well, in this extended live weather stream, we're going to be able to look through a lot of different parameters and things that we look at as meteorologists that we can't do on air. And I'll just first give you the bullet points. This is our storm threats graphic. So we can see in red that high, that is under strong winds. So damaging winds, high risk of that. We're going to get some heavy rainfall. And then the tornado and hail risk is a little bit lower. It doesn't mean it's zero. It just means that it's not as high as damaging winds. However, the tornado threat has been, looking at some model runs, a little bit more significant than some of our other most recent storm systems. Let me show you our tornado environment graphic. This shows you as we head through the afternoon. Of course, it's hot and humid, but the wind shear doesn't come into play until we get closer to 9, 10, 11 and midnight tonight. This model shows lower numbers and values than when we were looking at this yesterday in our live stream, but this is just one of those ingredients that we're looking at. We do believe that the time frame of that, the threat for tornadoes would be higher to our north and west across Alabama and Tennessee, but it's something we're going to watch. That's a low end chance. And then we also look at that chance of damaging winds, the chance that we could see a lot of other significant parameters lining up to produce severe weather. All right, let me show you another graphic. This one is going to look at what's happening with our other severe players. So this graphic shows you, well, looks like it doesn't want to pop up. All right, we'll go to the next graphic. I'll have to fix that one and come back to it a little bit later. But this is showing you that in northwest Georgia, that risk of damaging winds is a lot more intense and higher on that threshold than what things were looking like even yesterday. So more of a damaging wind threat, maybe not as high end on the tornado threat as we were looking at yesterday, but something that is supportive enough and conducive enough for a brief spin up tornado. Okay, what is happening outside right now? Well, there's not really much happening in our viewing area. What we are tracking are some storms to our north and some storms to our north and west. I've zoomed that satellite and radar out so you can see we've got this line of thunderstorms, this Boeing feature of thunderstorms that is moving from central into eastern Kentucky with a tornado watch out in advance of that. If you've been in touch with the news the last couple of days, yes, these are closing in on London, Kentucky, Laurel County. I used to work in that market, and it is incredibly devastating, the destruction there in London and Somerset and so many other communities there right around kind of southeastern Kentucky. But you can see from Danville down to Somerset, those storms are right over Somerset right now. Let me turn the lightning a little bit smaller in the size on our appearance chart here. Let's make it a little bit smaller so it's easier to see. But those storms are racing east towards I-75. But where I expect those storms to go is to the east. So the tail end, the southern extent of that line, is going to push towards Knoxville. We're about a 2.5, 3 hour drive away from Knoxville, so we don't expect that line of storms to impact us here. We're watching a few more discrete cells developing across central Tennessee and then back in Arkansas and Mississippi, and that's what I'm going to keep my eye on a little bit more. We've got this tornado warning ongoing throughout southern Tennessee, across the Tennessee Valley. And this one earlier did have a confirmed tornado on the ground when it was northwest of Florence. That now, the rotation not as significant. So it is a tornado warning, but it's not a confirmed tornado on the ground right now. Not much happening throughout Alabama, but as I zoom out this radar, you can see we've got, let me loop it so you can see the development of these. These just look like little showers right now, right? It doesn't look like much. We got a couple of showers across central Arkansas, a few trying to develop across Mississippi, but it is the environment that these showers are developing in to where we believe they will become strong, they will become severe, and that'll be the seedlings or the beginnings of what will move into our area later on this evening and overnight. So we don't have anything in our region right now. I'm going to zoom out and show you big picture the radar. I'm going to show you two different models. And one of the things that we look for as meteorologists is how are these models initializing or starting? What do they look like at first? Do they actually look like what is represented on radar, or are they starting off wrong? Because if they're starting off looking like they're not accurate, chances are, with the chaos effect, it's going to be even more inaccurate down the line. So this is what actual radar looks like. The line of storms, central Tennessee up through central Kentucky, couple little showers popping to the west, but again, it's more formidable storms moving through Tennessee and Kentucky. A lot more lightning, a lot more heavy rain. This is the HRRR model, how it's initializing, the high resolution rapid refresh. It does a pretty good job. I like how it shows those storms there. It's trying to develop some of these isolated cells. These look a little bit more intense on this model than what they actually look like in person, but it's showing the right features. This is the graph model. See the difference? Here's the HRRR, it's showing the storms, and here's the graph. It's missing the southern extent, how far south of those storms are going. So for that reason, when I look at big picture, this is the graph that's not initializing well. Well, it pops storms up and then it kind of gives us a little break and misses us as it gets into North Georgia. That's the one that wasn't initializing well. Here's the HRRR. It is initializing well. Watch what happens as we head through the evening, brings the storms in, and it doesn't break that line of storms. It keeps it intact coming into North Georgia. So we're just kind of splitting hairs looking at models, but I just wanted to show you big picture. One of those things that we're looking at as meteorologists ahead of a severe weather event is how are the models initializing? And in some of these setups, like we've seen over the weekend and everything, they don't initialize well. But I do like the way the HRRR is initializing right now, or starting off. I think it's capturing what's actually happening on radar pretty well. So I'm going to show you that model first. Very warm outside today, borderline hot. It's a little humid as well. Nice little southwest breeze pumping in that heat and humidity. This is the HRRR model again. So it's showing you by 6:30, 7 o'clock tonight, there could be an isolated discrete cell in northwest Georgia, and then the main clusters of storms start to enter a little bit earlier than the graph model. So this model is showing them by maybe 8 or 9 o'clock tonight, and then as we work our way through the evening between 10, 11, midnight, 1 a.m., those storms are entering the Atlanta area, and then by 3, 4 o'clock, they're kind of getting out of here. But it does have a more widespread depiction of how the storms could look later tonight through early tomorrow morning, and then they really fizzle out as we approach sunrise. Now, here's the other model. This is the one that wasn't initializing well, but I want to show you it because it shows a different solution. It does have at 7 o'clock tonight the storms a little further west, and it also has kind of that discrete nature stuff ahead of the main line. And as we push that forecast track out, it has, maybe an isolated storm in northwest Georgia, and then it's later with the timing of the storms coming into North Georgia. This model has 10, 11 o'clock tonight, getting into that northwestern corner of the state, and then really trying to fall apart as they get into the Atlanta area. So it is a possibility that the storms could fall apart, but I think that HRRR model, the first one that was showing a better starting look of it, might be more realistic with we do keep that line of storms together as they get into North Georgia later on. So I know that was very long-winded, but when we're on Weather Impact 24/7, we have infinite amount of time. So we really have the opportunity to talk with you all, the viewer, about what are we looking at as scientists? What are we looking at in the models, the different ingredients that could come together and show you more than we can show you in 2.5 minutes on TV. Okay, outside right now. Oh, it feels great, doesn't it? Well, it's kind of like a heat torch outside. That was a live camera in Blue Ridge, and up there in Blue Ridge, we're in the low 80s. Here in Atlanta, we just spiked to 86 degrees. We've got a partly cloudy sky. It's a little bit humid, not as muggy as it was first thing this morning, but it's that southwest breeze at 14 miles per hour that's pumping in the heat and humidity outside right now. Temperature 86 in Atlanta. Duluth is 91. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the feels like temperature. These are the heat index values. Heat index of 89 in Athens. In Duluth, you see the heat index 88. That's because the humidity is lower so it's not feeling as atrocious outside. For the afternoon, we expect highs to be around 90 degrees, so it's going to be hot. It's not going to feel as humid this afternoon as what it did first thing this morning, but we're still going to see those dew points up in the 60s, which is enough to fuel those thunderstorms. Warmer, more moist air is more buoyant air, meaning updrafts, storms can rise a lot more. So timing things out for Atlanta. The afternoon will be dry. As we head into the overnight, those storms start to move in with the best opportunity here in the city and kind of either side of the perimeter between about 11 p.m. tonight and 2 a.m. tomorrow morning. So 11 to 2 would be that narrower window with when I expect the storms to be kind of in the heart of the Atlanta region. And always a good reminder when you're talking about having multiple ways to get warnings is also, when do I need to take shelter? Know the difference between a watch and a warning. During a watch, we have the ingredients there, but they haven't come together yet. Meaning, if we had a cupcake watch, we would have our flour, our sugar, our baking powder, our eggs, our milk, whatever, out on the counter, but we don't actually have cupcakes yet. When we have a cupcake warning, the cupcakes are being pulled out of the oven. You can eat them. They're there. So a severe thunderstorm watch means we have got the ingredients together where we could see severe thunderstorms. That means have your plan just in case you're put under a warning. A severe thunderstorm warning would mean it is going to happen or is happening now. That's when you make sure, if it's a severe thunderstorm warning, you're not outside, you're not near the windows, not near the doors, you're inside your house staying safe. And of course, during a tornado warning, that is when you take shelter. That means a tornado is either imminent or it is likely to occur at any moment. So have that way to get warnings and know what to do when you're placed under a warning. Big picture though. We've got storms coming in tonight. Let me just show you what's coming behind these storms. And that is a nice little drop off in humidity. This moisture tracking chart, for those who are weather nerds out there like me, it's called precipitable water. We're looking at how much moisture is in that atmosphere to produce rain, and heavy rain at that. We have plenty of moisture around today, but watch the color turning that dark blue and purple color. That's the drop in humidity behind the front. So that'll drop our feels like conditions outside into this comfortable or pleasant range for the end of the week. That also means that the afternoon rain chances go away. The morning lows drop a lot cooler, and afternoons will also drop a little bit as the air mass turns to a cooler air mass. So tracking that storm chance overnight tonight, and then we will lose that chance of rain through the start of the weekend, but it's not going to finish that way. Here's the European model showing you as we head into Saturday afternoon. Very slim chance of a shower out there. Sunday, another opportunity for maybe a hit or miss shower or storm. Most of us are dry, but Monday, the atmosphere becoming a lot more favorable. Monday and Tuesday, an incoming front will produce some showers and thunderstorms here. So Tuesday brings another opportunity for showers and storms in addition to Monday. The American model, very similar, looks mostly dry on Saturday. This also keeps us a little on the drier side for Sunday. Then for Monday, it has some hit or miss showers and thunderstorms, a better opportunity Monday night into Tuesday. So those are things that we're looking ahead towards later in your 7-day forecast. I know today's Tuesday, but we have graduations coming up for some school systems at the end of the week. And then over the weekend, more of those graduations, graduation parties. Memorial Day is Monday itself with a lot of memorial services first thing in the morning. And then we've, of course, got that unofficial start to summer happening this weekend as well, with a lot of people going out on area lakes and pools as well. So rain chances increase throughout the weekend. By Memorial Day, it goes up to 40% chance of showers and thunderstorms, and that might be a little bit conservative on the scale. All right, 7-day forecast. You see and read that weather impact alert. That is what we are laser focused on in your forecast this evening and all through the overnight. What we're going to be doing for you here on Weather Impact 24/7, only on 11 Live Plus, is that starting at 7 o'clock at the top of each hour, we're going to have these extended live streams for you. So as we track storms moving into North Georgia, we're here for you. It doesn't matter what's on real TV. On 11 Live Plus, we can be devoted to covering weather that impacts you 24/7, right at the tip of your fingertips. You turn on that TV, you go to 11 Live Plus, find weather impacts 24/7, and you can see our live streams, live radar, and we'll be talking to you throughout the evening and overnight as it warrants as these storms are moving in. All right, after this, what I do is I'm looking through no data. Chris Holcomb, Chief Meteorologist, is coming in, as well as meteorologist Danielle Moss, analyzing what's going to happen this evening and overnight. We'll have that for you starting at 4 o'clock today on 11 Live News. And if you're watching us on repeat, if you stick around after this forecast, a live radar is coming up there as well. And then starting at 7 o'clock tonight, live updates, the top of each hour, and when we see new warnings coming up as well, tracking these storms coming into North Georgia. Stay safe out there. Again, have multiple ways to get warnings while you're asleep.